Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, we are talking about mixed reality solutions in the Microsoft Dynamics 365 space with Microsoft MVP Chris Segurado of Mazars. Chris tells me about his own experiences working with D365 mixed reality tools and how Microsoft's offerings have advanced since they were first revealed a few years ago. Mazars is the sponsor of this episode, and Chris talks about where he sees promising opportunities for more mixed reality scenarios today. We also discuss the impact on specific industries and how organizations can get started with the technology, from HoloLens 2 to D365 Guides and Remote Assist to Power Platform and OpenAI. All right, I'm here with Chris Segurado. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Maybe we could just start with a bit of an introduction of you for anyone in our audience who doesn't yet know you.
Awesome. Of course. I keep it short and sweet. Chris Segurado. I'm leading the Microsoft SEM team as well as mixed reality team here at Mazars, located in Manhattan, and I'm in the industry for quite some while. Especially on the SEM side. I am an MVP since last year. I was a Microsoft certified trainer and very passionate about Microsoft technologies, and happy to be here today to talk to you about mixed reality.
It's great to have you. Yeah, and I would just add, if Chris's name sounds familiar, you do stuff everywhere. You've done some great demos that are on our site, and I know you presented at conferences and so forth too. Yeah, it's really great to have you. And you have an interesting sort of focus and interest in the world, in the dynamic space, especially because you've probably tested and worked with, Microsoft's mixed reality solutions as much as anybody who I know, certainly. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in those solutions and what you've been learning about them?
Awesome. Yeah. As you know, my background is heavy Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management with all its beauty, from standard procurement sourcing, advanced warehousing, TMS, up to landed cost and asset management and so on. And as we were building out the SEM capabilities and offerings here at Mazars, especially in the SEM, around SEM, it was for me no-brainer for me to review, analyze, and build up also capabilities in the mixed reality space, especially because they're really great value adds and benefits for frontline workers, right? And the business case around guides and remote assist was well perceived. And then 3 years later, we're now here and speaking about mixed realities. And in the last 3 years, just if you're taking a quick recap, I had various speaking sessions on mixed reality, as you know, at the North American Summit last year in Orlando, where we also met and spoke about mixed reality and asset management. I have actually an upcoming speaking session in Slovenia for the Dynamics Minds conference, speaking about mixed reality manufacturing specifically. A couple of webinars, as you said, have you had together on field service and remote assist, or a couple of podcasts like the one today or the MVP show, and a couple of industry papers specifically targeting the C-level suite and kind of planting the seed for mixed reality and how it's impacting, how it can help your organization driving efficiencies, productivity, save costs, and so on. So that was my journey over the last 3 years, just literally creating awareness and making sure that folks and organizations understand what is mixed reality, because what we found was, if we talk to organizations, often it was not really tangible to what mixed reality is and how it can actually impact and benefit your business. It was an unknown, right? So that's where I came in and tried to create awareness around it. And short, myself and Mazars are very committed in the mixed reality space. We're seeing a clear value here. And that's how my journey started, and it's going at this point.
All right, excellent. Yeah, and what are some of the scenarios, some of the cases that are really getting people's attention? What kind of feedback are you getting as you show people the technology, show them the scenarios that you've built up perhaps? Are there any that are really resonating?
Yeah, there are multiple scenarios, right? I can highlight a couple if you would like. But at the broader level, maybe just to speak about mixed reality at the broader level, for me, it will be or is a clear industry disruptor. And right now, it will be in the future. And I think if I don't lean myself too far out of the window if I would say even industry agnostic, means around healthcare, manufacturing, asset management, retail, training, warehousing, and so on. And why? Let me give you some examples and address or touch on some of those use cases. For example, if you're performing a task as a worker, frontline worker, right? You have the ability to view data, reports, videos, content, documents You can interact with a backbone ERP via a Power App, for example, while being hands-free, right? You can execute a task, get the information, or the guide can guide you through a specific or complex production process or asset maintenance process, right? An inspection list. And you are hands-free, you're on the machine while you have that information accessible to you. Pretty much you have the information exactly when you need it at the right point in time. You don't need to go back to your laptop, or you don't need to walk around the warehouse. You can literally take a look what is your on hand on the fly when you're at the production floor or when you're at the machine, and want to check, hey, do I have the repair part for my asset? Well, instead of you going back to your laptop checking your ERP, you could directly fetch the data while being on the machine or while executing a process. I think this is a big strength of mixed reality, because you get the right information at the right time while being hands-free. We have seen a lot of training scenarios, actually, not only for production control or manufacturing, also asset management and also warehousing itself, where instead of having a trainer on each facility, organizations move more to a self-paced, repeatable training, right? Where you can, as a one-time investment, create that guide that guides you through a process in alignment with your security standards, in alignment with your quality standards, in alignment in how you would execute that specific task or process. And you can have it repeatable. It's a one-time thing to build that guide, for example. And moving forward, you can have one trainer sitting somewhere in the world that you can call if you need to, if you're stuck, via remote assist. And that person or trainer can guide you through the process because he sees or she sees what you're seeing through the HoloLens, and he's sitting behind or she's sitting behind the laptop and seeing it via Teams. So I think there are efficiencies from that standpoint also to be called out, not just from a process improvement standpoint, but also from a collaboration standpoint. How does collaboration look like in the future with HoloLens, for example? Those are a couple of scenarios that we came across from manufacturing, training standpoint, and asset management standpoint.
From what you're saying, it sounds like those align fairly well with what Microsoft's kind of packaged mixed reality D365 solutions were sort of designed to do. Is there good alignment there from your experience, or have you really needed to take these solutions in different directions to sort of suit some of these scenarios that you're discussing?
Interesting question. For the most part, those scenarios actually line up, because that's the immediate or the first thought, how you can add value in a more guided, controlled process flow, and how it can guide and direct frontline workers through a process more efficiently. The first scenarios that pop up in mind are manufacturing or asset management scenarios, right? Mm-hmm. There are actually also use cases from more like a back office standpoint. For example, we're talking about working on some internal audit use cases, for example. But yeah, it's lining up very nicely. And what we're hearing from the market or the industry, it's lining up nicely with what Microsoft has already built. And the nice thing is, I mean, as you know, those applications or Microsoft's business applications are built on top of Dataverse and via DualWrite, what is, for the listeners that don't know, it's an out-of-the-box infrastructure that allows a near real-time integration between CE applications or Dataverse, as well as Dynamics 365 F&O, what is often used as your backbone ERP. So Microsoft laid it out very well and easy to integrate and to use it and to add it on, right? At the moment, yes, it's still perceived as a cherry in the cake, an optimizer, not per se a must need, right? But I would encourage that you don't miss the train here and at least formulate a strategy or get a feel for how mixed reality could support and improve your business processes. And it was actually how or why we as Mazars created an offering around what we hear in the industry, as I addressed priorly, that the feeling or the understanding of mixed reality is a bit not 100% tangible, right? Or not really 100% understood. And that's where we docked in with our MazarsNow mixed reality assessment offering and wanted to create that awareness. We wanted to have an offering that, first of all, consists of a concept training. It teaches you the basics. How is it, for example, guides built on top of Dataverse. You can use Power BI to report on data in Dataverse. You can interact with Power Apps. How can you use remote assist? So pretty much a standard concept training. And then afterwards have an app in a day kind of workshop to make it even more tangible for the end users and SMEs. And then last but not least, have a BTA, business transformation assessment conversation on how, now that you understand how mixed reality works and has a more tangible feeling, how can you actually use it in your unique business scenario, in your unique business process? And we come from two angles to the same table and have the conversation and build out a roadmap. So that's what we hear, actively listening in the market, what is a gap to be bridged, right? And that's why we actually build an offering around that.
Interesting. So it sounds like some manufacturers especially are responding by taking that next step and at least putting a plan in place to envision how they could use this in the future. Is that right? Or are some going even further?
Correct. I mean, at the moment, primarily what we're seeing is interested on building a strategy or like an understanding around that. There, of course, certain prospects or organizations that we're working with, they have internal innovation teams and so on. So they're a little bit more advanced and invested, I would say. But yeah, it should be on every CTO, CIO's roadmap or radar to have at least a strategy to not miss out on that technology. Mm-hmm. Because again, I mean, I'm very convinced that it will be a disruptor in many ways.
I've heard just anecdotally the notion of, at least trying to invest in a few HoloLens to, devices and letting your team actually get their hands on that can be very powerful, even when you don't have a formal program to follow with using them, that they can pretty quickly in some cases. And again, this is just anecdotes I've heard. They can turn into very useful tools for people once they get a chance to play with them. Have you ever seen that?
100% agreed. I couldn't be more aligned. As I stated, like there is still a barrier because it is not really understood what mixed reality is, right? People say, "Oh, metaverse, what is it doing?" Like they associate it with other things, and they don't understand the use cases, the capabilities. How can I use it? And 100% agreed. Playing around with it, actually testing it out, even with a small POC, is often the entry card for, oh, that's how it works. Oh, that could help me here and there, and make my process more efficient. And it helps not only the frontline workers, also, for example, at the managerial level, just to point that out. It might sound scary. Every process, for example, in a Dynamics 365 guides in that application, every step that you take is actually tracked. So I can see user 1 took 5 minutes for step 5. And if there's a pattern, right, you can create, or you can have Power BI reports and can see the patterns. You can see, oh, we take a lot of time in step 5. Maybe we should take a look why that is. Or there might be decision tree where a user on the HoloLens can choose A, B, C, whatever he or she wants to do. For example, let's say we have a repair guide, right? And you have 70% screen replacements and 20% battery replacement for a laptop, for example. Well, you probably want to check your quality of your supplier for the screen, right? So there are other findings, not just guiding and empowering your workforce, and having a repeatable process, a standardized process that you can follow, your workforce can follow. But there's also other findings that you can gain out of the data that the guide is tracking, for example.
Yeah, that's such a interesting, impressive application where the kind of insights that are just not available through, I guess, more typical conventional training approaches right now, or if they are, they're much more difficult to measure in some, I guess, less direct way. That's really an interesting thing. I imagine that's got to be catching the attention of trainers, and I'm not even sure what the role would be that would be looking at those kinds of reports, but certainly in bigger organizations, someone should be evaluating those kinds of performance details, right, of new hires and people adding new skills, new tasks to their work.
Correct. Yep.
All right, great. Well, I thought maybe we could actually get a little more specific about the products that Microsoft actually offers in the mixed reality space a bit, and the product direction as you understand it. I try to track this, but I probably don't always see every corner of it. What have you seen in terms of Microsoft's sort of stated direction for some of these products? And I'm thinking, and maybe you could actually list them out, like which ones we're talking about here. You mentioned guides, obviously, but can you give us a bit of an update?
Sure. I mean, specifically the applications we are working with and that are here to stay, as of my understanding at least, is Dynamics 365 Guides. What the application helps you to create guides, author guides, and direct your workforce through a complex process with 3D objects, videos, pictures, an instruction card while being hands-free, right? And additionally, you can interact via Power App at certain steps in the guide, right? And can even fetch or interact with a backbone ERP via, for example, a premium connector in Power Automate and Power Apps, right? So, for example, the scenario that I brought up is, hey, I'm doing my asset management or my asset inspection. I'm seeing something needs to be replaced. I can fetch data from my backbone ERP via Power App while being there in mixed reality. The Power App pops up in front of me. And I can fetch the data. If I see, I don't have enough on hand for, the part for the replacement that I need, I can actually even create a PO directly while being at the asset, while being hands-free, just by interacting with a mixed reality Power App.
Mm-hmm.
That's one application. Another one is Dynamics 365 Remote Assist, right? Again, you can have, instead of having a trainer on each facility, you can have one super trainer, or maybe a super user, if you want to call it that way, sitting somewhere else, and maybe more junior resources that actually are the frontline workers. It can save costs, right? And you can collaborate at a different level. Nice thing is you can do screenshots. You can do video recordings for maybe documentation if you do a certain asset inspection, for example, or a certain production control process. The other person on the trainer, or the super user, how I call it, could see what you're seeing, and you can document it, right? And I can, me as a super user, I could throw arrows and point you to the right direction. Hey, please take this cable. Hey, do that. Hey, use that tool. And I can literally guide you through the process in a different level of collaboration. It's not just you on a Teams call with words. You can also get that collaboration to a different level. So those are the two mixed reality business applications that we're primarily working with. Of course, there are other mixed reality initiatives like Mesh, for example. There could be a whole another topic for another podcast that we're having. But yeah, I think I want to highlight those two. And from a product direction standpoint, I think why you asked it, and we had a couple of chats on the side over the last couple of weeks, right? I think you're referring to, or that question was, the product direction was as a result of those Microsoft layoffs that happened as part of the reorg early this month, right? I mean, as of my understanding, I can just give you my understanding of it. Those were more targeted around the alt space VR team, right? As far as I know, we're still bullish on focusing on Mesh and those mixed reality applications that I just mentioned. So as of my understanding, they're here to stay. And I mean, you can also take a look at Microsoft roadmap. There's still things out there that are actually, for example, becoming general available in April. For Dynamics 365 guides, with, for example, improved annotation stability, or there's an improved calling experience where you can see if it's an external or an internal user that dials in via remote assist. You can also start calls via meeting link, or you can take pictures or screenshots with mixed reality content. So there is a roadmap, and there's still development ongoing, what tells me there's investments ongoing, what tells me we're good to go with those product offerings.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I think I might have seen some of the same references after we had, sort of briefly chatted about that. Microsoft did put out sort of a more affirmative statement saying the same that you just said, which is that, those AR and VR teams that were not part of the business applications, D365 mixed reality, really didn't affect the product roadmap from what they stated. So yeah, that's good to know, because, getting back to some of those, to the applications themselves, the remote assist and guides, and then, you just think of all the potential ways that those could be used as the rest of the product line evolves, whether it's some of the supply chain, insight type of products, whether it's field service on the, sort of CE side of things, or projects, or, whatever it is. I mean, there's all these ways that it could continue to be sort of blended into those type of scenarios, right?
Absolutely agreed. I mean, the big use cases were asset management, production control, and field service at this point. But I expect, and I actually curious and interested to see what other touch points Microsoft invests in and comes up with, and listening to their customer base, understanding, of course, what HoloLens is capable of. I would envision there would be more integration points to come. And again, we had to do right integration if such applications are if such mixed reality applications are still on Dataverse, right, built on top of Dataverse, we do right, those are easily integratable with, for example, Dynamics 365 SCM or advanced warehousing potentially. I mean, I could see a bunch of use cases there that I'm excited to hopefully see in the future.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to, use of HoloLens 2 versus, say, a tablet or some other kind of device, do you think, is HoloLens really the primary medium or, piece of equipment that's going to be in these stories and in these scenarios going forward?
Interesting question. Actually, I can, of course, not disclose the other hardware that I was testing on my end, right? But HoloLens by far was the best device from various aspects. For example, the 3D objects were very stable, right? It was very reliable. It was very robust. And it runs that Microsoft operating system. So, I mean, so far, it has been my preferred choice, not only because we as Mazars consult for it, right? But also in comparison with other hardware devices providers I tested, and it was by far the best device.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other, information about what you and your team are actually planning to do to incorporate some of these solutions into your work? Any particular plans?
Yeah, working hard on continuing creating awareness, right? Because again, this is, I think, the entry barrier at this point, because the understanding is not there. So we will have, or I will be in May in Slovenia to speak at the Dynamics Minds conference, in North Carolina at the North American Summit. End of the year, I will be there too to have a speaking sessions. We have a couple of webcasts or webinars, industry papers, planned blogs, just to spread the word and make sure we can plant the seed and create awareness. This is the first part of how the mixed reality journey of an organization can start. And then hopefully through that offering that, again, we actively listen to what our prospects and clients, what entry barriers they had for their mixed reality journey. So we try to target that gap and bridge that gap through our MazarsNow mixed reality assessment offering. So that's what we're trying to continue doing. And again, we're seeing great feedback, good success here. And hopefully that's continuing in the future and we can see more use cases and build out the mixed reality capabilities and offerings on top of that.
Yeah, and I just have to plug your presence at any event. If you're listening to this and you see that Chris is presenting on mixed reality, definitely try to check it out there. Your events always get great reviews. And there's, let's face it, they're one of the most interesting kinds of sessions. If you're going to perhaps put on a HoloLens or show off, mixed reality scenarios, that can be a lot more interesting than, your typical conference slide deck. So yeah, definitely something to check out. I know I certainly will next time I'm at an event that where we cross paths. Well, let me ask you, let's go a little bit further, if I could, in the time we have left, just on, the broader sort of outlook on new technology. And, I couldn't probably let you go without at least getting your initial views on where you see Microsoft taking their AI solution, specifically, how they're approaching it with Copilot in the Dynamics 365 space and in the broader supply chain space, right? Because they also have a broader, I think with the supply chain platform approach, a vision for AI. Have you taken a look at that at all?
Yes, actually, I expected a question like that. So nice that you addressed it. At the general level, right? As many tech companies actually indicated on the earnings calls earlier this month and previous months, NVIDIA, I think, mentioned 75 times or so, Google 62 times or so, if I'm not mistaken. AI is a trend to watch out for in 2023, right? And with Microsoft's expansion and on their collaboration with OpenAI, ChatGPT, we saw a lot of hype around that, right? And there are interesting things to come, in my opinion. For mixed reality, interesting that you asked. I had a couple chats with Microsoft, some of their product teams on how that could look like, just, having a fun conversation. I could see, for example, a retrieval or information retrieval knowledge management plugin at some point where, you can ask, hey, how should assemble, or how should I repair my laptop? And it could retrieve the information, pass it back to you while you're hands-free. I could see something like that for the mixed reality space being very useful, like an information retrieval driven by ChatGPT or by OpenAI solutions, right? And you can see also already like use cases for chatbots and conversational AI to handle customer inquiries and context-aware responses. Interesting time ahead. There's a lot of things to come. I think we're at the start here. And as Satya said, the AI race starts today and we're going to move fast. So there's exciting stuff to come on that front too. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that I reflect on is, some of the examples that they had both in the D365 space and some of the examples that they showed off for Copilot for like M365. The ones that really got my attention were like where you could sort of visibly see an improvement in productivity, especially where it could do something that might have taken 15 minutes and reliably get it down to, a few seconds of letting the AI do that work, and finding those scenarios in a mixed reality setting. Or I don't know exactly what they will end up being, but that certainly seems like that some companies, some of your clients perhaps will land on some good, helpful scenarios where they can really take advantage of it. And maybe you'll have some of those to share next time we talk, because it's certainly not going away, as you said.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to catch up on that topic more in depth next time, and hopefully I have some fun and exciting updates for you.
All right. Well, it's a great area of discussion. I hope it continues to grow and show promise with the D365 space, and I'm definitely interested to see or get your observations on it as we go. So thanks again for your time today, Chris. Anything else you wanted to mention? I know you mentioned a couple of events you'll be at, but anything else you want to make sure our listeners pay attention to?
maybe just pointing, if you're an active listener and your organization hasn't formulated like a mixed reality strategy and you got curious based on a conversation, please take a look at AppSource and what we have published as Mazars here for MazarsNow mixed reality assessment. That could be your starting point of your mixed reality journey, and I would be more than happy to accompany you on that exciting journey. So I think besides that, I mentioned that I will be at a couple other events with Dynamics Minds in May and in the end of the year in North Carolina at the Dynamics Communities Summit. I hope I see you there.
Yeah, I hope so. Thanks again, Chris. Great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks much, Jason. Appreciate it. It was a pleasure.
This has been another episode of the MSTW podcast. My thanks once again to Chris Segurado for joining me. In this message from Mazars, visit mazars.us/Microsoft to learn more about MazarsNow mixed reality assessment, or email the team at bizapps@mazarsusa.com. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. And for all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.